Hello everyone, welcome to today's class. Good evening. Yeah, I hope I am audible. So we have completed 11 lectures in medieval India so far, and we have reached up to Humayun. Okay, so the next Mughal emperor who came after Humayun is Akbar. So today we are going to see Akbar's reforms. Okay, Akbar is one, probably the king about whom we have to study the most. Clear? Akbar has done plenty of things in during medieval India. Even if we consider the entire history, Akbar is one of the persons who we have to deal in depth a lot. So today's entire chapter is dealing with Akbar. It's a big chapter actually. Initially I thought of splitting it into two sessions and covering it, but then I did not want to extend this sessions too much. Okay, so that is why I have decided to put everything together into one session and complete the rule of Akbar. In the next section, we will see what happened during the time of Jahangir, Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. Okay, so welcome to today's class, Consolidation of the Mughal Empire or the Age of Akbar. So this is the chapter that we are going to see today. Again, we are following the Satish Chandra Sir's textbook on history of medieval India. So once again, I welcome all of you. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, please do so and make sure to share with your friends as well. Okay, so let's begin. If you have any queries, please feel free to put it in the YouTube live chat. Okay, and I will look into it and get back to you as soon as possible. So occasionally I will be checking the chat. I won't be looking at it constantly. So good evening, Tamil Selvan. Good evening, Satya Pandey. So let's begin. So in the last class, we studied up to the death of Humayun. Okay, how did Humayun die? He fell from the first floor of his library and he succumbed to his wounds. So after the death of Humayun, his son Jalaluddin Muhammad, okay, also known by the popular name Akbar, came into the throne. So Akbar was actually really young. Okay, I mean he was at the age of 13 when he actually became the emperor of Mughal India. So obviously he was not in any position to rule such a vast empire which Humayun and Babur has managed to build up. So he needed some help. And immediately he started facing a lots of issues as well. I mean, 13-year-old kid at the helm of the power. Okay, so plenty of issues. Afghans were still a problem. They were constantly creating issues for the Mughal Empire. So was the Suris. Okay, although Sher Shah and his son Islam Shah are gone, still some Suris were remaining, and Sikandar Suri was still creating issues for Akbar. And among the Afghans, the main issue was Hemu, also known as Hemachandra. Okay, Hemu was one of the major issues that Akbar had to deal with. So overall, Akbar had a very bad time during the initial years. But he had a great help and advice from Bairam Khan. Alright, Bairam Khan was the tutor of Akbar and he was actually the favorite of Humayun as well. Here, Humayun trusted Bairam Khan to take care of the entire kingdom during his absence. And Bairam Khan was very loyal to the Mughal throne and he took the title of Khan-i-Khanan himself and took care of Mughal things. He rallied the Mughal forces in the name of Akbar, and till Akbar came of age, Bairam Khan maintained such a vast empire and he also expanded this empire even further than what Humayun has given him. Clear? So it was Bairam Khan who basically kept the empire intact and expanded it until Akbar came of age. So as I have mentioned, Hemu was the main issue. Okay, and Akbar was still very young. If you have seen the film Jodha Akbar, that film begins with this incident, the second battle of Panipat. Okay, the battle happened in the very famous battleground of Panipat between Hemachandra and Akbar. Okay, although Akbar is just a nominal name. Basically, it was Bairam Khan who was leading the battle. Clear? So in that battle, Hemachandra or Hemu was helped by almost all the Afghans. Afghans never liked the Mughals. Okay, they wanted to somehow throw away the Mughal yoke. And now the 13-year-old is in the throne, so it is easier for them. So all the Afghans came together and backed Hemu. Clear? And finally, they met in the battlegrounds of Panipat in the year 1556, November 5, 1556. And Hemu almost won the battle, but towards the end of it, Hemu had to suffer a severe blow when an arrow hit his eye. Okay, that also is very well shown in the Jodha Akbar film at the beginning. I hope you have seen that film. Okay, and when the king died, obviously their army got demoralized and they just began to lose its way. And Akbar managed to win the day. Okay, so the second battle of Panipat ended with Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar still reigning as the Mughal emperor and Hemachandra, the main rival, deceased. Alright, so now Akbar has managed to keep a block as well as Afghans are concerned. Now we have to see how did Akbar manage to expand his power and finally became the king who we know. Okay, I mean Akbar is one of the best kings or emperors who ever ruled India. Clear? I mean we can equate Akbar with say Ashoka or such great kings of the ancient times. In the medieval times, it was basically Akbar. So in all ways, okay, in administration, in religious policy, in all these areas, social reforms. So what were the initial days of Akbar? Okay, or what all did happen at that time? Basically, the earlier days were dealt by contesting with the nobility. Okay, nobility was a huge issue. I mean, it was always a huge issue in almost all courts, Mughals or say even Delhi Sultanate, whatever. Even in South India, whenever a kingdom occurred, they had to deal with the nobles or the nobility. Anyway, Bairam Khan, continued to rule under, in the nominal name of Akbar. Problem was, despite him being a very efficient personality and very loyal to the Mughal throne, during his activities or due to his activities, Bairam Khan offended a lot of people. Okay, and he managed to make enemies with a lot of people. So the nobles within the court itself started conspiring against Bairam Khan. They started saying that Bairam Khan is a Shia Muslim and he is favoring Shias for higher position, etc., etc. So basically, they began to conspire against him and fill Akbar's ears against Bairam Khan. And Bairam Khan was somewhat arrogant also. Okay, despite being a very efficient personality and all, his religious views were actually liberal. Okay, he was a Shia, yes, but he was not favoring Shias for administrative posts or anything. That was just a made-up story. But problem was, he was a bit arrogant. And he also failed to understand that Akbar was growing up. When he was 13 years old, Bairam Khan had all the powers, yes. But now Akbar started to grow up and he began to become more and more mature. Bairam Khan still considered Akbar as a child. He failed to notice that Akbar is now actually becoming an adult and he has to respect him as any other empire. He had all the respects, obviously. I'm not saying he didn't, but he failed to notice this. He kept on taking decisions in the name of the emperor himself. So eventually, the nobles in the court managed to successfully conspire against him, and Akbar, on a fine day, on the pretext that he is going somewhere else for hunting, he managed to move himself away from Bairam Khan. And from Delhi, okay, he went to Delhi. And from Delhi, he issued a farman dismissing Bairam Khan from office. Akbar did not want to do it directly, so he went away into Delhi. And from Delhi, he issued a farman that Bairam Khan is hereby dismissed from office. And when Bairam Khan heard about this, he was actually okay with it. Okay, I mean, he was ready to submit to Akbar. I told you, Bairam Khan was always loyal to the Mughal throne. So he was ready to submit. He said, "It's okay. I'm willing to submit to Akbar." Problem was the nobility of Mughals. They were not ready to give a pass to Bairam Khan. They wanted to humiliate him. Okay, they really wanted to humiliate Bairam Khan. So rather than giving him a easy submission, they tried to create issues deliberately. They tried to humiliate Bairam Khan and spread miswords, etc., etc. And finally, all these events made Bairam Khan to rebel. Okay, Bairam Khan started to. He was basically forced into this rebellion. Obviously, Akbar sent a huge force and defeated Bairam Khan and forced him to submit. And when Bairam Khan was taken to Akbar's court, Akbar actually welcomed him very graciously. He was the person who looked after Akbar and the Mughal throne for all that time. So Akbar knew that Bairam Khan was a very loyal personality and all. So Akbar graciously welcomed him and gave him two choices. Number one, Either he can work for Akbar in the court, or you have to go to Mecca. This was the condition. Either go on a pilgrimage to Mecca or work under Akbar in the court, in the position that Akbar gives him. Bairam Khan chose to go to Mecca. Okay, and so he was graciously sent into Mecca, and on his way, he was actually assassinated by another Afghan who had some personal grudge against him. Okay, Akbar was not the person who is behind this or anything. He had some Bairam Khan had some personal grudge with an Afghan had some personal grudge with Bairam Khan, and on the way, Bairam Khan was assassinated, and there ends the story of Bairam Khan. And from now onwards, it is Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar who is in the throne at the apex and deals with everything. Clear? So this is how Akbar comes to power. And when he heard the news of Bairam Khan's death, he actually brought Bairam Khan's wife and son to his court. And Bairam Khan's wife was very young, okay, at that time. Bairam Khan had many wives, and the main wife was actually very young. Akbar actually married her. It was Akbar's cousin. Okay, she was actually Akbar's cousin, and Akbar married her. And Bairam Khan's son was actually considered as his own son. Akbar treated that person as his own son and was given very high titles eventually. And that person is known as Abdur Rahim Khan-e-Khanan. Another very famous personality in history, part of Akbar's court, the Navaratna court of Akbar. Okay, so, sorry. So, this was Akbar's attitude. Even if he faces a very huge enemy of any, whatever might it is, he was still very much, courteous, and he was very much pleasant in welcoming all these people. Once they submit, Akbar always made friends of him. And when he grew up into an adult, and eventually, throughout his administration, we will continue to see this attitude of Akbar. Okay, this is how he actually successfully established one of the biggest empires in India under the Mughal throne. So, during the rebellion of Bairam Khan, there were other individuals and groups in nobility who also started to become politically active. Okay, it was not Bairam Khan alone. I already told you. Certain factions of nobility wanted to conspire against Bairam Khan. So they started to activate themselves. And one of the biggest elements in this group was Akbar's foster mother, Mahamanga. Okay, I think if you remember Jodha Akbar film, throughout this chapter, please relate it to the Jodha Akbar film. Okay, so if you remember that film, there Mahamanga is actually shown in that film. She causes lots of trouble to Jodha Bai in that film. Okay, so Mahamanga and her relations started to become more and more politically active during this brief phase. And Uzbeks formed a powerful group in the nobility, and they too started to become very much politically active and arrogant, and they started to defy the orders of Akbar, and all these caused further rebellions. Okay, plenty of rebellions started to happen due to the arrogance of these nobles. This is what I told. Nobility is always an issue in almost all the empires ever in India. And encouraged by all these rebellions by various nobles, Akbar's half-brother, named as Mirza Hakim, he seized control of Kabul. If you remember, Kabul is the place from where Babur actually, managed to attack India and get into India. So Kabul, since that time, was under Mughal rule. So Mirza Hakim, Akbar's half-brother, rebelled against Akbar, and he tried to control Kabul and tried to advance into the Punjab region. So Akbar had no choice but to march against him and defeat him. So Akbar marched into Lahore and finally forced Mirza Hakim to retire. Plenty of Uzbek leaders were also killed in the battle. And finally, somehow Akbar managed to establish some kind of peace. All these nobles who rebelled against him were either submitted forcefully or killed. Clear? So any other noble who wanted to rebel against Akbar was cowed down by fear. So Akbar basically strong-armed all of these people into submission. So once this nobility air was cleared, once this rebellious air was cleared, now Akbar was free to expand his empire. He already got a very big empire from Humayun. Bairam Khan already expanded it to a considerable extent, and now it is Akbar's turn to take it into further expansion. Okay, so Now Akbar has a lot of time to consider his options to expand the might of Mughal Empire into east, west, south, north, whatever direction he wants. So going south or going towards west initially, provinces like Ajmer, Malwa, etc. were conquered. Okay, I mean Malwa, there is a very famous story regarding the conquest of Malwa. Malwa actually was ruled by a king named as Bas Bahadur. Okay, he was a person, a very, he was actually a patron of all kinds of music, poetry, etc. He neglected the army totally, and this eventually cost him his empire. But he is more famous for the love story between Bas Bahadur and Roopmati. Okay, their love story is very historic. I mean, it is in the Malwa folklores and all. Okay, that is why this particular story is very famous. But anyway, that is not our concern. I'm just giving you some extra information. But Akbar defeated Ajmer, Malwa, etc., etc. And this Malwa expedition was actually led by Adham Khan. Adham Khan is the son of Akbar's foster mother, Mahamanga. Okay, so Adham Khan was in charge of this battle. He defeated Bas Bahadur, and he actually collected all the bounty and loot from his kingdom. That's the kingdom of Malwa. That included Roopmati. And instead of going with the Mughals, Roopmati decided to take her own life, and she committed suicide. Clear? And due to all these cruelties which was conducted by Adham Khan, I mean, this war was very bloody. Okay, Adham Khan basically ransacked the entire kingdom of Malwa, and he thoroughly defeated them, and massacres, etc., etc. So because of all these cruelties conducted by Adham Khan and his successor, there was a huge reaction against Mughals from Malwa and other nearby regions. Obviously, when such a massacre occurs, the people there obviously reacted against the Mughals. And very soon itself, they lost Malwa, and Bas Bahadur was able to recover Malwa in a very short span. So again, Akbar had to go to Malwa on his own and fix these losses. Okay, I mean the Adham Khan's conquest, although it was a temporary win, it immediately went away, and Akbar had to march down once again to take back Malwa. And some other conquests are also very much notable. For example, the conquest of the kingdom of Garh Katanga. Garh Katanga is a kingdom that is in the Narmada Valley and then includes the northern portion of Madhya Pradesh. Okay, so somewhere in the central Indian region. So Garh Katanga, it was actually ruled by a very able person known as Amandas. Okay, but that was also finally taken away by Akbar. Amandas is the same person given known by the title Sangram Shah. Okay, anyway, Garh Katanga included some Gond tribes, Rajput principalities, etc., etc. And Sangram Shah had further strengthened his position by marrying his son to a princess of the famous Chandela ruler of Mahoba. And this princess is famous as Durgavati. Okay, problem was Durgavati very soon became a widow, but rather than cowing down by her social position, she actually placed her minor son in the throne, and she took the administration into her own hands. She was a very able marksman, with both gun and arrows and all. So Asaf Khan, another Mughal governor in this area, he heard about the immense wealth in the Garh Katanga region. Okay, and he also heard about the beauty of Durgavati. So he wanted to acquire all this wealth and the Rani. Clear? So he conducted a campaign against this Rani, and obviously, Rani was defeated, and Rani did not want to submit herself, so she took her own life by stabbing herself. Okay, so when Akbar had dealt with the rebellion of Uzbek nobles, he forced Asaf Khan to disgorge his illegal gains. This Asaf Khan, basically led to all this, death of Rani, etc., etc. And he took all the, precious jewelries and all the wealth from Durgavati. Okay, and he did not give the, governor is supposed to remit a particular amount of this bounty to the emperor. He did not give that. The emperor kept it all for himself. Or I mean, he only paid a very small portion, and he was supposed to pay a much larger share. So when after Akbar dealt with the Uzbeks, when he came to know about all this phenomenon that happened in Durgavati's kingdom, Akbar asked Asaf Khan to pay the correct amount of share. And then he restored this Garhkatanga kingdom to Chandra Shah, the younger son of Sangram Shah, and he took 10 forts around that kingdom to Mughal power. So basically, what happened was Akbar took control of various kingdoms in central India, which included this Garhkatanga, Malwa, Ajmer, etc., etc. These are just background stories. Okay, the most important things are his administrative policies and his Mansabdari system, etc., that we are going to see. But for now, understand that whenever Akbar manages to defeat an opponent, he always dealt with him or her in a very polite fashion. Here also you can see, instead of annexing that kingdom to Mughal Empire, he gave back that empire to, that kingdom to Sangram Shah's youngest son in return for 10 forts. Okay, he took 10 forts from that kingdom just to make sure that they won't, rebel against the Mughals, and if such a rebellion occurs, he can easily contain that. So this was the strategy used by Akbar in his expansionist policies. Now comes Rajasthan and Gujarat. Uzbeks nobility were supported by which regional king? They were different to Afghan nobles supported by Sur dynasty. Uzbeks were, very, if you remember, Uzbeks were one of the powerful, powers in the Central Asian region. Okay, from Central Asia, they constantly used to worry the Mughals. It always happened. And they constantly come, there were plenty of skirmishes, etc., etc. And we will, in future, see that Akbar is the person who consolidates the northwestern border of India. So, Uzbeks were, basically a Central Asian tribe. So, any king or any power in India which was against the Mughals sided with them. So, earlier when an Afghan ruler like, say, Sher Shah Suri or say Islam Shah, etc. was there, Afghans all rallied behind him. So, similarly, here, once these Afghans were completely defeated, the rest, any faction who wanted to fight the Mughals, always rallied behind the stronger power, whoever was ready to take up that fight to Akbar. So basically, Uzbeks were not an Indian faction, they were a Central Asian faction, and they were constantly trying to attack Mughal India from northwestern portion, Kabul, okay, etc., etc. They did not have any local support in India. It's not like they are a part of Indian politics. They are always a foreign power in trying to invade the Mughal territory. Anyway, Rajasthan and Gujarat, very two important states. So during the next 10 years, Akbar brought major part of Rajasthan under his control. Also Gujarat and Banga. Okay, Ajmer, Malwa, Garhkatanga all captured. And now we have to turn your attention to proper Western India, which is Rajasthan, ruled by the very brave Rajputs. So now we are going to see how Akbar dealt with the Rajputs. What is Akbar's Rajput policy? Obviously, needless to say, Chittor was one of the biggest and strongest forts in Rajasthan among the Rajputs. Okay, so whoever controls the Chittor fort is basically controlling the key into central Rajasthan. This place is also very important because it controlled the trade route between Agra and Gujarat. So Chittor is very important. Earlier also we saw Alauddin Khalji did his best to take over Chittor, and he succeeded in that also. Okay, so Akbar also tried to control this fort, and after a period of a gallant 6 months siege, finally Akbar managed to defeat Chittor Raja and capture the fort. The Raja of Chittor, Rana Uday Singh, he had no choice but to retire to the hills. He had to escape to the hills. They couldn't continue to hold that fort. It has been 6 months besieged. What does that mean, besieging? Besieging means not allowing anything to enter or leave the fort. Okay, so gradually the supplies within the fort will exhaust, and the people will, if they don't come out and fight, they will die out of starvation within the within the fort. This is the plan of besieging the fort. So that was done by Akbar into this fort, and after 6 months, the supply started to run off, and the king had no choice. So Rana Uday Singh escaped into the hills and left the fort in the hands of his two very famous warriors, Jaimal and Patta. Okay, Jaimal and Patta are the very famous warriors of Rana Uday Singh, and they were given the charge of the fort, and the king, left into the hills. So many peasants also came into the fort. Okay, I mean the civilians also came into the fort, and they were all arming themselves and getting ready to defend the fort against Mughals. Clear? So when the Mughals stormed the fort, all these people were massacred. Peasants, soldiers, everyone they saw, they were massacred. And this is actually considered as the first and the last time Akbar indulged in such a carnage. We never see Akbar doing such cruelty again, and we have never seen Akbar doing that before. This is the first and last time we see Akbar engaged in such a cruel war. Okay, plenty of look at the numbers. Around 30,000 people were massacred. Okay, but 1 second. Okay, sorry. But Akbar was really impressed by the way the Rajputs defended themselves. Okay, especially Jaimal and Patta, they were very brave warriors. Both of them died in the battle, but they fought to their last breath. And Akbar was very impressed by them. And in order to honor them, Akbar ordered 2 stone statues of Jaimal and Patta sitting on top of an elephant to be erected outside the chief gate of the fort of Agra. So in the gate of the fort of Agra, you can see 2 elephants on both sides, Jaimal on top of one and Patta on top of the other. This was actually constructed on the orders of Akbar because of Akbar's, Akbar becoming impressed by Rajput valor. So anyway, Chittor fell. Okay, so Akbar proceeded into the next fort, that is Ranthambore. Ranthambore is the strongest fort in India as far as the Rajputs are concerned. Okay, strongest Rajput forts. So anyway, maybe it is the strongest, but Akbar finally managed to defeat that also, and he continued his conquest, which included Bikaner, Jaisalmer, etc., etc. And the only Rajput power which actually resisted Akbar was Mewar. Every other Rajput clan was defeated by Akbar one by one. Okay, sometimes they accepted Akbar's suzerainty by themselves. Sometimes they had to go for a battle, and eventually they surrendered when after losing the battle. Okay, some of them voluntarily went up to Akbar and submitted themselves. All this you can see in the Jodha Akbar film. Okay, some of the kings actually paid homage to Akbar, accepted his suzerainty and made friends with Akbar. Some of them actually wanted to stay independent completely and want to fight. So Mewar was one kingdom which always resisted Akbar and never accepted his suzerainty. So along with Rajasthan, Akbar went forward to the western part of India and reached Gujarat. Obviously everyone wants Gujarat. Okay, why? It has very fertile soil, it is very good in handicrafts, and it is a very important center as far as trade is concerned. If you remember, in the early part of medieval India, we studied that horses from Arabian region were imported into India, mostly through the Gujarat port. Okay, as far as northern India is concerned, Gujarat is one of the most important outlets into the Arabian Sea. So due to all these obvious reasons, Akbar also wanted this one. Okay, and he had one other reason also. Earlier I told you, Akbar had to deal with a lot of nobles and certain rebellions in the northern part of India, throughout his territory. So Mirzas, okay, a group of people known as Mirzas were actually one of those factions which rebelled against Akbar. And when he quenched this rebellion, a lot of them escaped into Gujarat. Okay, they were actually given refuge in Gujarat. So this is also considered as one of the reasons why Akbar was eyeing into Gujarat. He wanted to capture them and strong arm them into submission. But thing is, when the mighty Mughal army came into Gujarat, Ahmedabad, the capital of Gujarat, submitted without a fight. In 1572, Ahmedabad surrendered without a fight. And according to the historians, this is the first time Akbar saw the ocean. Okay, I mean the Indian Ocean, I mean the Arabian Sea region of the Indian Ocean is in Gujarat. So this is the first time Akbar actually saw the sea, and he actually took a boat trip in the sea and all. Okay, so that is during his Gujarat campaign. This is also the time when Akbar met the Portuguese. Okay, a group of Portuguese merchants came to meet him, and Portuguese had the ambition of establishing an empire in India. Problem was that Portuguese ambition of establishing a strong empire in India was collapsed when Akbar took over Gujarat. Gujarat was supposed to be the stronghold of Portuguese. But now the mightiest North Indian king, Akbar, has conquered Gujarat, and Portuguese can't pick up a war against Akbar at this point of time. He's a very strong king. You can't defeat him like that. Clear? So basically the Portuguese plans of expansion of territories in India went away when Akbar took power in the Mughal throne. So now the Western Indian portion is settled. Okay, Rajasthan under control, Gujarat under control, Malwa, Ajmer, everything under control. Now Akbar decided that okay, this is done. So let's go to the eastern part of India. So he focused his attention into Bengal. Why? Obviously because eastern India was dominated by Afghans. Afghans always constantly troubled the Mughals. I already explained that even during the time of Humayun, we saw Sher Shah Suri and Islam Shah and all fighting it out. So although the Sur dynasty was basically over, still some Afghans were creating trouble in eastern India. So Akbar thought that now I can focus onto that and defeat them and expand the empire into that direction. So Afghans had continued to dominate in Bengal, Bihar, etc. They overran Orissa, etc. So one thing that Afghans did in order to avoid a direct conflict with Mughals is that they did not try to offend the Mughal directly. Okay, because Mughal power is very much mighty at this moment, and you don't want to pick a fight with a strong person. So they actually, Afghan ruler had not formally declared himself the king, but read the khutbah in Akbar's name. Okay, usually the khutbah is read in the name of the king. So instead of reading it in his own name, the Afghan king actually did that in the name of Akbar. And he did not say that he is an independent king. Okay, he prevented saying that so that he can avoid a confrontation with Akbar. And obviously, there were a lot of infighting within the Afghans. And finally, there was a declaration of independence by the new ruler, Daud Khan. Okay, I mean, Afghan issues under Sher Shah Suri, they were all united. Under Islam Shah, they were all united. But afterwards, they began to infight, quarrel among themselves and started to weaken their own position. A lot of weak rulers came to the throne. So, in order to avoid this direct confrontation, they read the khutbah, etc. in Akbar's name, but they were still not the Afghan affairs in India was not yet a consolidated thing. So Akbar was looking for an opportunity to suppress them forever, and he was waiting for that single opportunity. This was given to him by Daud Khan, who announced or declared independence on his own. So when a king declares independence on his own under the Mughal Empire, it gave the Mughal Empire a chance, an opportunity to attack, a pretext to attack. Okay, and Akbar took it efficiently. Clear? And this chance given to Akbar was a blunder. So Akbar came in with a very huge force. Mughal armies arrived in Bengal, and after a very hard campaigning, Daud Khan was forced to sue for peace. And although this was settled, still when he got an opportunity, Daud Khan came up into conflict once again. He rebelled again, and then again Akbar had to send a huge force, and finally in Bihar in 1576, Daud Khan was defeated and executed on the spot. Clear? And by the death of Daud Khan, Afghans' ambition, the ambitions of the Afghan nobles or Afghan kingdom in India finally came to an end. Okay, this ended the last Afghan kingdom in northern India. Daud Khan was the last important king there. This also brought an end to the first phase of expansion under Akbar. Okay, the Akbar's entire career we can divide into many phases, and this is the end of first phase. His expansion towards eastern India and the defeat of Daud Khan put a mark in as the end of first phase of expansion under Akbar. So now the Mughals have almost the entirety of North India. Okay, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Malwa, Ajmer, Garh, Katanka, Orissa, Bengal, everything under Mughals. Okay, so now let's see Akbar's administration. So after the first phase of expansion, he did not try to immediately go into South India or Deccan and expand downwards or towards the northwest. Akbar decided that he will take a break from expansion and now he will concentrate on to administration. That is very important. As the kingdom or as the empire becomes bigger and bigger, it becomes even more difficult to manage, right? So he had to set up a very beautiful system of administration which could control such a vast empire. So this was looked after by Akbar in a very efficient manner, and he set up one of the best systems of administration in the history of India. Clear? So Akbar finally found some time for good administrative machinery. And one of the most important problems faced by Akbar in the field of administration was land revenue. Land revenue administration, the system of land revenue administration was always a big problem. Okay, I mean, in India, geography is very different. Okay, you can't levy uniform tax in all the lands. Certain crops are more productive and more yielding. Some others are not that much. There could be famines, calamities, this. So levying a uniform blind land revenue won't work. Also, the collection of this revenue is very hard. How much should you collect? What officers should you give the charge to? How can you make sure these officers are, not dishonest? Okay, so this was a constant headache. So Akbar decided to adopt Sher Shah's system. Okay, I already told you earlier. Sher Shah was, one of the best administrators ever in India, and Akbar decided to follow his policy. Yesterday we talked about Sher Shah's land revenue system. The rate he levied known as Ray. I hope you remember. So Akbar followed the same system, but he made some obvious changes. Okay, he had to do this in a much bigger scale, so he had to make certain kinds of changes also. So it was soon found that fixing of a central schedule of prices often led to lots of delays and resulted in the hardships of peasantry. That is true, right? You can't fix the price centrally. Why? Because if you fix the price centrally, then taxes will be levied accordingly. Correct? And always the prices in the city is very high. That is true, right? You can buy a commodity for a cheaper price in a village than in a city. And that is obvious. So here, if Akbar decides to levy the price as per the prices existed in Delhi, then the peasants will have to pay up a much higher tax than what they can afford. So centrally scheduling a price was not a welcome step as far as peasants were concerned. So Akbar decided to abandon that system. Okay, so he decided to make some changes. At first, Akbar reverted to a system of annual assessment. Okay, I mean, he wanted to bring some stability in land revenue system. So this is what he said: I am going to levy this taxes based on annual assessment. Yearly, there will be an assessment, and taxes will be levied according to that. The Kanungos, that is the hereditary holders of the land, as well as certain local officials, conversant with local conditions, were given, the charge to report the actual produce. Similarly, the state of cultivation, local prices, etc., etc. So the local machinery of administration was given the charge to report to the sender what are the prevailing conditions. Okay, so based on their report, Akbar will take care of things rather than fixing the prices based on the prices in Delhi. He asked what are the local prices in that area, and based on that, he will, levy the revenue. Only problem was these local administrative machinery and these Kanungos and these local chiefs and all, they were extremely corrupt. They were dishonest. They always, they started to manipulate these reports in which is favorable for their own way. Okay, and they made the life of peasants even more miserable. So Akbar understood this. Okay, Akbar understood that there are plenty of corrupt officers who are not giving me the exact report which is which they are supposed to do. So what did Akbar do now? Certain officials called Karoris were appointed all over North India. And it was their responsibility to collect 1 crore dams, which is roughly equal to modern day 250,000 rupees. Okay, so each of these Karori was given the responsibility to collect 1 crore dams and also to cross-check the report given by these Kanungos. And on the basis of the report given by these Karoris, Akbar instituted a new system known as Dasala. Okay, so because he did not trust the Kanungos, he himself authorized certain officers named as Karoris, and based on the report of Karoris, Akbar initiated the system of Dasala. So what is this Dasala system? Under this system, average produce of different crops as well as the average prices prevailing over the last 10 years were calculated. That is Dasala. Dasala means 10 based on previous 10 years. Okay, so based on the previous 10 years, the average produce was calculated and average prices prevailing was also calculated. And whatever is the arrived number, 1/3 of that was supposed to be collected as state share. And this was collected strictly in cash. Okay, strictly in cash, not in kind. In the Dasala system, the taxes were collected in cash only. Clear, and the amount collected was 1/3 of the produce based on the previous 10 years average. Okay, this was the initial step. So this is the first adaptation made by Akbar. Later on, certain improvements were made in time so that it could become more and more efficient. Okay, so one such improvement made by Akbar was that along with the local prices, paraganas having same type of productivity were grouped into separate assessment circles. Okay, he decided that he will group those areas which have similar kind of productivity. Okay, paragana is one of the units of administrative division. So he grouped those paraganas having same type of productivity into different circles, so that the peasants were required to pay on the basis of local productivity as well as local prices. Okay, so one circle together, the revenue levied on that circle is the same. Okay, that circle has paraganas of all the paraganas in that circle are of same productivity. So everybody in that circle has to give an X amount based on their productivity and the prices there. Similarly, as for the different circle, it's different. Clear? So based on the local conditions and the local prices, they can give the taxes to the empire. So this is extremely fair. Clear? So Akbar is, as time passes, Akbar brings in more and more reforms which will even more streamline this tax collection, this revenue system. So on doing all this, what are the advantages? Advantage is that as soon as the area sown by the peasant had been measured by means of bamboos linked with iron rings, the peasants as well as the state knew what the dues were. Okay, immediately after the measurement, the peasant and the officials knew what is supposed to be collected. Just think about it. Otherwise, they will have to wait for the sowing season, the harvest season. Sorry, not sowing season, harvest season. And when they harvest, they have to calculate, how much is the produce and etc. And they had to, calculate the tax. But by doing away with that system and by making the previous 10 years, as the base for revenue calculation, it enabled the peasants to know what they were supposed to pay in advance. Okay, at the time of sowing itself, by looking at the area, how much they have sown, they already know. They do not have to wait for the harvest. Based on the previous 10 years productivity and previous 10 years prices, they can straight away calculate how much should they pay. So this became very easy. So now the intermediary or the local official cannot levy more tax on the peasant. Why? Because even the peasant know what he should pay. Okay, so again, a very brilliant system by Akbar. Similarly, during the time of certain calamities or say famines, etc., etc., Akbar offered a lot of remission in these taxes. Clear? Then again, Akbar continued with even more modifications, etc., etc., and the system of measurement and assessment was based upon another new system which he brought up, known as Zapti system. Okay, it continued to evolve. The Zalas, he had lots of systems were there. We will study about 2 or 3 of them. So we already looked into the Dasala system. Now the next one is Zapti system. So what is the difference? What is Zapti system? Here, the sawn area is measured based on bamboos and iron rings, and Akbar, based on this measurement, the tax was levied. Okay, in the Dasala system, it was solely based on previous 10 years produce. But in the Zapti system, okay, here this also will come with, this statement should come here. Okay, I'm sorry for that. But the difference again, I'm repeating it. In the Dasala system, everything is based on previous 10 years. In Zapti system, the land is measured, okay, based on with bamboo sticks and iron rings, and based on that measurement is also taken into account while levying the tax. Okay, and Akbar introduced this system from Lahore to Allahabad and in Malwa and Gujarat. The Dasala system is actually a further development of Zapti system. Zapti system came first. Okay, the order is actually reversed in this slide. The reason is that I was just going in the same order as given in the textbook. So actually, Zapti system is Dasara system is an improvement over Zapti system. In Zapti system, once again I am repeating to those people who are confused at this moment. In Zapti system, the land is measured using bamboo sticks and iron rings, and particular prices or a particular tax is levied based on that measurement. In the Dasala system, along with this measurement, the previous 10 years average is also taken into account. Okay, so that is Dasala and this is Zapti. Anyway, the credit of this system actually goes to Raja Todarmal. Okay, Raja Todarmal is a Hindu who, but still due to Akbar's very liberal religious policies, he managed to rise in the ranks and become the finance minister of Akbar. And Raja Todarmal is credited to have designed this system, Zapti. And for this system, this Zapti system is also known as Todarmal's Bandobast. Okay, both are same. Todarmal's Bandobast and Zapti system are one and the same. Clear? So Todarmal is actually a very well-trained person, because before he became the finance minister in Akbar's court, earlier he used to serve Sher Shah. And Sher Shah, obviously you know how great personality he is. So Todarmal had all that experience under Sher Shah, and then he came to Akbar's court. So obviously he was a very brilliant revenue officer under Mughal rule. And apart from these two systems, plenty of other systems were also there in land revenue. For example, you have the Batai system, also known as the Galla Bakshi. Okay, even that is divided into various parts. We will study that later. Batai is divided into Khed Batai, etc., etc. This system is also known as Galla Bakshi system. And as far as this system is concerned, here the produce was divided between the peasants and the state in a fixed proportion. Okay, and the division was done in multiple ways. One way was that it was divided after it has been thrashed. Harvest is done and it is thrashed into grains, and this grain is divided into 3. This is one method of doing that. The second method was it had been cut and tied in stacks. Okay, it is harvested but not thrashed. Okay, but before thrashing itself, it is divided into 3 piles, and one goes to the emperor and other 2 the peasant can keep. Third method was that while it is still in the field, before harvesting itself, it is divided. Okay, the field is divided into 3. Everything collected from this goes to the emperor, the other 2 the peasant can keep. This was the 3 methods in which Batai system or the Gallabakshi system was employed. Okay, 3 kinds of division. 1, after harvest, after thrashing, the grains are divided. Second, after harvesting, the stack pile is divided. Third, even before harvesting, the field itself is divided and taken. 1/3 is taken. Clear? And this system was a very fair system. Thing is that you need very honest officials to implement the whole thing. Because if the person or if the person who is assessing this is corrupt, then both the emperor and the peasant will stand to become the losers. So you need honest, non-corrupt officials in order to implement the Batai system. This was the major drawback of the system. Okay, so peasants were usually given a choice. I will look into your comments in a bit. Okay, let me just finish this administration. Only one more slide, I think. After that, I will look into the comments. So the peasants were actually given a choice. Either they can take the Zapti system or they can take the Batai system. There were certain conditions. Okay, I mean, based on those conditions, they had to decide. So the condition was that this kind of choice was usually given when there was some ruin of crops based on calamity or famine or whatever. So earlier I told you under the Dasala system, the peasants had to pay in cash. But under the Batai system, the peasants were given a choice of paying in cash or in kind. State preferred cash, but you can pay in whatever way you want. And as far as cash crops were concerned, what are cash crops? Cash crops include cotton, indigo, oilseeds, sugarcane, etc. These kinds of crops. And as far as these kinds of crops were concerned, the taxes were collected always in cash. There is no option of paying in kind. You have to pay in cash, invariably in cash. Clear? So that is Dasala system, Zapti system and Batai system. Another system that prevailed was the Nasak. Okay, the system of Nasak. Nasak is basically, historians do not even accept that Nasak is a system. They believe that Nasak is basically guesswork. Okay, and it is a guesswork. A rough calculation of the amount payable by the peasant is arrived based on what he was paying in the previous years. Okay, by looking into his previous year's payment, a rough estimate is arrived at, and this estimate was supposed to be given. This is the Nasak system, also known as Kankut system, which also means estimation. So, a rough estimation. Understood? So, sometimes that happens with our electricity board also. At certain times, if they cannot come and look at the meters and all, they will put a random number based on our previous bills. Okay, and if that, they will adjust it in the next bill. But however, this is based on estimation. Okay, no concrete work is done. They look at the previous payments and estimate the next payment. That's all. Also known as Nasak system or Kankut system, which means estimation. So these are the types of taxes or land revenue systems that Akbar levied in the Mughal Empire. Basically, Akbar tried to implement this everywhere in the Mughal Empire. Okay, one of these systems had to be there in throughout the empire. No other kind of system was allowed to be levied, not even in independent kingdoms. As long as they accepted Akbar's suzerainty, they were supposed to take one of these. Okay, so then again, the problem is the land is very different. Okay, sometimes that land is cultivated, sometimes it's left barren, or say maybe even abandoned, and afterwards sometimes the cultivation again picks up. So it's not easy to fixedly pay the same amount. Okay, if the land is left barren for 1 year, then why should you pay? No cultivation has been done, so how can you pay? Okay, so these kinds of more and more variables came into picture. So this is the time when Akbar decided that he is going to divide the land based on productivity. Okay, so land which remained under cultivation for throughout the year was called as polach. Okay, and taxes were collected based on that. Then, when this polach remained uncultivated throughout the year, or if it is left fallow, then it is known as parati. Okay, completely left without any kind of cultivation. That is Parati. Now, Parati land, if it is cultivated, it has to pay the full rate. Okay, the land may be left fallow, but if at any point of time, if it is cultivated to the full extent, then you have to pay the full rate. Third type of land, that is the land which was left fallow for 2 to 3 years, was called Chacha. And more than 2 to 3 years is known as Banja. So these were the 4 divisions of land. One is Polaj. Polaj means it is completed throughout, cultivated throughout the year. Second one is Parati, which means it is left fallow completely. Third one is Chacha, which means the land is not cultivated for about 2 to 3 years. And then it's brought under cultivation. And if that land is not cultivated for more than 2 to 3 years, then it is called Banja. These are the 4 types of land under Akbar's land revenue system. Clear? And then these were assessed based on the concessional rates and revenue demand, etc., etc. And you have to pay. Okay. Then again the land was further divided. Okay, this was the top division. The superficial division. There were further detailed divisions. Each of these land was divided again into good, middling, and bad. So in a good land, you can levy a higher rate because the production is high, the yield is high. In a middling land, you have to take the average. And in a bad land, you can't levy high rates because the production is very low. So that kind of division was also very much there. Anyway, in any case, 1/3 of the produce was the state's share. Okay, whatever the land is or whatever the production is, 1/3 of it has to be given into empire. Now the thing is, in the medieval times, there is no secure financial security. Okay, especially as far as peasants are concerned. If they have to face a very bad harvest, they could go into a situation of extreme poverty and very miserable conditions. So they can't even buy seeds for the next harvest, next sowing season. Clear? So what did Akbar do now? Akbar understood the condition of the peasants. So he's actually ordered certain officers called as Amir. They were supposed to advance money by way of crop loans, agricultural loans known as Takavi. Earlier, under a Delhi Sultanate ruler, we saw the same loan. Can anybody tell me the name of that ruler in the chat? Okay, during the time of Delhi Sultanate, there was one ruler who gave this agricultural loans named as Takavi. Tell me what is the name of that ruler or the person who initiated this, the crop loans, the agricultural loans. I'll give you a clue. He is also the person who established the agricultural department, Diwan-i Amir Kohi. Who is that ruler? I will look into your chat in a bit. So anyway, Akbar decided to give these kinds of crop loans so that the farmers can buy seeds and devices and animals, etc., etc. Whenever they need. Clear? And Akbar also tried to make these peasants to use more and more plows. Okay, he wanted to make sure that more and more land come under cultivation. Clear? Rather than sticking with one area, he encouraged the peasants to plow more and more areas. Wherever it is cultivable, try to expand that cultivated region. Clear? And he also tried to make them use superior quality of crops and seeds and all. So overall, Akbar paid a lot of attention into the field of agriculture. And as far as zamindars were, zamindars were very much there. Okay, in medieval India, the position of zamindar is very prevalent. As far as zamindar is concerned, he had certain hereditary rights to the share of produce. Thing is, peasant also had the right in the produce. As long as the peasant paid the dues to the zamindar, peasant cannot be evicted. So peasants had that kind of security. Okay, as long as you pay a particular amount to zamindar, his due to the zamindar, he and his family cannot be evicted from the land. We will see eventually. When we studied modern India, we saw that during the time of a particular ruler, this was reverted and peasants were made into tenants, and zamindars had almost all right throughout the land. I hope you remember that. Okay, but anyway, at this point of time, even peasants had certain customary and traditional claims into these lands as long as they paid their dues. So one thing you have to understand in this on the Dasala system is that it is not a 10-year settlement. Okay, don't confuse this. It is not the permanent settlement system, or it is not the Mahalwari or anything. Dasala does not mean a 10-year settlement. Dasala means what? Based on the previous 10 years, the amount is calculated. That is all. It doesn't say that for the next 10 years you are supposed to pay this only. No. Every year, the value is arrived by calculating the prices and productivity of previous 10 years. That is what is meant by Dasala. It doesn't mean the tax is fixed for 10 years. No, every year it changes based on the previous 10 years. But anyway, this system implemented by Akbar, Akbar's land revenue system was very efficient, so that throughout the Mughal dynasty, this system was followed more or less without any changes. Till the end of 17th century, we see that Akbar's settlement remained the basis for the land revenue system of Mughals. Okay, I hope you understood. Still there should, I'm expecting that there will be certain kinds of confusion. Don't worry about it. Once you read it more, or once you read it after the class, it will become very much clear to you. Let me see if there are any questions. Comparing Akbar and Aurangzeb's reign, who faced more rebellion? It's entirely different. Okay, it's not a fair comparison for one, because Akbar had to basically reinvent the whole Mughal empire. Okay, Humayun made a mess of it against Sher Shah. You know what happened. And even when Humayun came to power, he couldn't stay long enough in the throne. Before that itself, he died. And Akbar was left with, having to reconquer everything once again. He had the help of Bairam Khan, so he was able to do that also. And Mughal Empire is still not that big. Now he has the entire North India thanks to Akbar. Akbar is the person who establishes that kind of an empire in the north. We will study in the upcoming slides that he is the person who establishes the northwestern frontier of India and consolidates the Mughal position there. The Kabul, Kandahar, Ghazni line, the defense line of India in the northwest, was established by Akbar. We will study all that. Aurangzeb was different. During Akbar's time, all these rebellions happened based on political reasons. They want independence and nobles were conspiring, etc., etc. Aurangzeb's reign, things were entirely different. He was a religious bigot. Okay, and his religious policy was criticized, so there were certain rebellions against that. Then his administrative policy was a complete disaster. He spent too much time in the Deccan that he completely neglected the throne in Delhi, and it gave rise to the rebellions such as the Satnami rebellion, etc. Then by that time the Sikhs come into play, and Aurangzeb disrespects the Sikhs, and that leads to certain other kinds of rebellions. Okay, then Aurangzeb comes into direct confrontation with the Marathas. That leads to some. Okay, it's entirely different. It's not fair to compare these two. So we will see how these Konangos paid by Akbar and why their post was hereditary. They were proved as inefficient or corrupt because they got hereditary post. Yes, but it is local administration. Okay, Konangos means it's like a village post. Okay, village headman, that kind of a post. So in all these administrations, too much centralization was not there. Clear? And just think about it. Consider today's India. Okay, our prime minister is sitting at the top, and he wants a completely fair administration without any kind of corruption. Can he personally make sure that every village officer in modern day India, or every taluk officer or tahsildar is incorrupt? Is it possible? You can't personally pick persons for that, right? And the office had to be made hereditary for lots of reasons. Earlier we studied that when constant transfers happened, what did these officers do? They did not have sincerity in their work. They know that after 2 years I am going to be transferred. So in the 2 years, I will collect maximum as I can. I will gain more and more wealth and get out of here. But when this was made hereditary, these people began to be at least sincere to their land. Because now you can stay here and you can implement long-term schemes. Okay, now all this land is theirs. So you can more and more invest into this land and gain more and more returns. So some kind of sincerity is also added. Okay, during the time of Vijayanagara Empire, we studied what happened due to the constant transfers that happened. Okay, I mean both sides has merits and demerits. Anyway, as far as Kanungos were concerned, it was basically a hereditary position. It was corrupt. So rather than trying to replace them or trying to implement a transfer system, which would have been a chaos, Akbar decided that he will appoint certain officers as Kakoris, very trusted officers. Okay, so first comes Sapti, then yes, Tamil Selvan, correct. I think Muhammad bin Tughlaq, also correct, very good. Drawbacks of Dasala system. Dasala system is an evolving process. Okay, it's based on the past 10 years, yes, but during the times of famines, etc., this Dasala system won't work. Okay, so Akbar had to remit or make severe concessions on the taxes and all, and Akbar did that. Whatever drawbacks the Dasala system had, Akbar made sure that it didn't affect the land revenue system. He made sure that peasants are not harassed at all. We will study that some more about these systems in the upcoming slides and all. At that time, we will see. The Dasala system is an evolving system. Okay, adaptations were made into it as time progressed, and that's why his administration and his land revenue system is considered as one of the best in India. At its nascent stage, there were plenty of issues. That is why I told you after that certain amendments were made to it. The land was measured based on certain new measurements, certain new systems based on production, cultivation, etc., etc. And it was not possible to do that throughout India. So options were given. If a person want to follow the Sala system, he can do that. If he want to follow the Khed Bataya or Galla Bakshi system, he can do that. Options were also given. Okay, we will look into all that towards the end. When the prelims approaches, I will take another class regarding point wise. Okay, at that time we can compare all these systems individually for easy memorization. But anyway, please do study. Please do read the Satish Chandra sir's textbook, the corresponding portion of Satish Chandra sir's textbook. Very important. Don't leave it. Okay, Mansabdari system and the army. So now we saw the land revenue system and the administration of Akbar. Now we are going to see his military administration and in general, what was his Mansabdari system. Okay, very famous system. All of us already know what this is. But to the people who do not know, here it is. So, obviously, if you are planning to construct or follow a policy of expansionism, then you need a very powerful army. Without a strong army, no one can expand their kingdom or no one can even keep their territory intact. That is true. Every country needs a very strong army. So Akbar also had a very extensive, powerful army. And this army was actually based on something known as the Mansabdari system. So what is this? What is this Mansabdari system? Every officer was assigned a rank. Okay, not this. You have to understand that this is not just in army. Mansabdari system was used as a system for entire bureaucracy. Okay, it's not just for military people only. It's also given to, say, revenue officers and all people. It's basically a bureaucratic system, Mansabdari system. Okay, so every officer was given a rank, and this rank is known as Mansab. The lowest Mansab is 10, and the highest Mansab is 5,000. Okay, this was the prevailing idea. But eventually, towards the end of Akbar's reign, we see that some officers were even given ranks of 7,000. But initially, in its nascent stage, this was the picture. Lowest rank is 10 Mansab, highest rank is 5,000 Mansab. But the princess of royal blood is given very high Mansabs. Okay, apart from this, very high Mansabs can also be given. Two very prominent people in the empire who got the highest Mansab is Mirza Aziz Koka and Raja Mansingh. Both of them were given 7,000 Mansab each, highest in the history of Akbar's reign. Mirza Aziz Koka and Raja Mansingh. Clear? And basically this Mansabdari system continued as such until Aurangzeb. Towards the end of Aurangzeb's regime, this system collapses. I will tell you why that happened when we reach there. Okay, but basically from Akbar till Aurangzeb, this system continued. And initially this had only one rank. Okay, that is it. Mansab, that's it. There is nothing, no subdivisions as such. In the 40th year of his reign, okay, somewhere in 1594-95, that period, Akbar actually divided this Mansab into two individual ranks. One rank is known as Zat, other one is known as Savar. Okay, Zat rank is the personal rank, determines the person's position, person's status, person's salary. Okay, and Savar is actually the number of cavalry that this person had to keep. Cavalry means, the horses. Okay, so this was the system. Zat, initially there was only one rank, that is a Mansab, but later on in the 40th year, Akbar divided this Mansab into two individual ranks, the Zat and the Savar. Zat is the personal rank based on it determines the personal salary, and then you have the Savar rank, that is the amount of cavalry that person is required to keep. Okay, and you can't keep some low quality horses. You have to keep extremely war quality horses, and Akbar made sure that this was done using the Cheshra and Dag system. This was implemented by Alauddin Khalji earlier itself. I hope you remember. Cheshra is basically an identification card for the soldier, or say the person, and Dag is the branding of horses. So using Cheshra and Dag system, Akbar made sure that the horses, etc., and the personnel are all well trained and of highest quality. Okay, so a person who was required to maintain, a person is basically required to maintain as many Savars as his Zat rank. Okay, so a person who maintains as many horses or as many Savars as his Zat rank is kept in a single category. Okay, this is the first category of rank. Those people who maintain half or more Savars as his Zat rank comes in a second category, and who maintained less comes in a third category. Okay, so I will explain it in a way you will understand even better. So assume that someone has a Zat rank of 3000. This Zat rank is divided into three Savar ranks, three ranks. The first rank will have those people who kept 3000 Savar rank. This is Zat. Second category includes those people who had 1500 Savar or greater. Greater than 1500 Savar. And the third category included those who maintained less than 1500 Savar. Clear? So each Zat rank was divided into three different categories based on the amount of Savars kept. Clear? So this was the basic organization of the Mansabdari system. So ideally, every person or every cavalryman was supposed to maintain two horses. I mean, it's obvious, right? If you are going for a war, you can't expect the horse to do all the, running throughout. Okay, 24/7 horse cannot work. It had to rest. Okay, so you have to make shuffles. Okay, appropriate shifts has to be made. So every cavalryman were supposed to keep minimum 2 horses. So every 10 cavalrymen will have 20 horses. I already told you the minimum Zat rank was 10. Okay, so the minimum number of cavalry to be kept is 10. So in that cavalry, there will be at least 20 horses. And this is a rule that was followed in Mansabdari system, the 10-20 rule. This is also one of the reasons why Mughal army was so strong. They always had fresh horses. If one horse is not well, you had a replacement horse ready. Okay, so this 10-20 rule was used throughout Mughal Empire in a very efficient manner in almost all its battles. Clear? Also, provision Akbar made sure that these armies were kept in a very say mixed manner. He did not allow factionalism to grow in his army. So he mixed it up. Okay, some soldiers were drawn from the Mughals, some were drawn from Pathans, some were drawn from Hindus, then Rajputs, etc. etc. So it is a mixed army. So if it is entirely a Rajput army, or if it's entirely an Afghan army, then what will happen? They will have a unity among themselves and they might rebel. To prevent that, he mixed it up so that they will have at least some kind of unity among them, a feeling of brotherhood between all these different castes and religions. So Akbar deliberately tried to weaken the forces of tribalism and parochialism. He wanted unity among all these classes of people. And at the same time, he can make sure that there won't be any kind of factional or communal rebellion against the throne. But there were certain exceptions to this. Mughals and Rajputs were allowed to, Mughals and Rajput nobles were allowed to keep contingents exclusively of Mughals and Rajputs. Okay, Mughals and Rajputs had this option. They can have a force which consists of exclusively their own men. That exemption is there. Clear? Apart from these cavalrymen, the army also included bowmen, musketeers, sappers, miners, etc., etc. So very efficient, established army. Iranis and Turanis received higher salary than Rajputs and Hindustanis. You have to understand this. Okay, so this is again a questionable thing. I mean, Iranis and Turanis, they were given a higher salary compared to Indian Muslims. Clear? But this salary was not paid directly to the soldier. It's not like Akbar will give the salary to that soldier straight away. This salary was actually paid through the Mansabdari system. So obviously, the salary due to the soldiers was added to the salary of the Mansabdar. And then Mansabdar will assign pay the salary to that respective soldier. So that was the chain. Okay, rather than paying it directly from the royal treasury to the person, the Mansabdar who owns that person or that soldier will be given all the payment, and then that Mansabdar will distribute it among his soldiers. This was the kind of system which existed there. So you have to understand that this system, this Mansabdari system, has no parallel or no precedent in India. We never come across this kind of a system before in India. This is the first time we see a system like this in India. Okay, but the origins of this system can be traced back to the Mongol leader Genghis Khan. He actually organized his army based on the decimal system. And so in Genghis Khan's army, the lowest unit of command was 10 and the highest 10,000, also known as Toman, which was commanded by a Khan. Okay, so this Mongol system influenced the Delhi Sultanate, and then we come to see that it has influenced the Mughals also. Obviously, Babur has Mongol lineage in his mother's side, so some of their systems have occurred in India also. Clear? So this was influenced by Genghis Khan, but this is the first time such a system came in India. And in that system, in the Mongol system, persons holding rank below 500 Zat were called Mansabdars. Between 500 and below 2500 were called as Amirs, and holding ranks of 2500 and above were called as Amir-i-Umda. Remember these terminologies. Okay, if you have a 500 Zat rank below 500, you are called as a Mansabdar. Zat rank between 500 and 2500 is called as an Amir. Above that is known as Amir-i-Umda. But eventually, all these people were came to be known as Mansabdar. Okay, Amir and Amir-i-Umda, all these were not predominantly used. As time went on, gradually all of them were commonly called as Mansabdars, and that is why the entire system came to be known as Mansabdari system. Okay, so an Amir or an Amir-i-Umda could have another Amir or Mansabdar under him, but a Mansabdar could not do so. Mansabdar is the minimum rank, so he cannot have a deputy. He is the deputy. Okay, 500 Zat is the minimum in this system, in the Mongol system. So that is the minimum rank. So he cannot have a Mansabdar working under him. Clear? But Amir and Amir-i-Umda can have an Amir or a Mansabdar under him, because they have very high rank. So they can afford lower ranks underneath them, subordinate to them. Okay. So this was not only for army men. This rank was also given to the civilians, and anyone could enter the system. That was the best thing about Akbar's administration. There was no kind of discrimination. Anyone can enter the system. So basically, from this scratch, a person can become an Amir-i-Umda if he wants to. Clear? So basically, all this was open to talent rather than ethnicity or rather than religion. Anyone could achieve any position if he has that merit. Clear? So basically, Akbar also paid them very well. That Mughal Mansabdars form the highest paid service in the world. This is something that we see during the time of Britishers also. Okay, the British administrative system, the Indian administration under the British, the British civil servants were the highest paid people in the world in the modern India. Similarly, Akbar's Mansabdars were the highest paid service in the world during medieval Indian times. Clear? So apart from all these, Akbar kept a huge body of cavalrymen and bodyguards as his own. I mean, the emperor also needs, right? I mean, he can have the nobles keep all this army and he can call upon this army for battle during the time of war. But he himself has to have a very strong army. Otherwise, these nobles could easily, remove him from power. So Akbar kept a body of large cavalrymen as his bodyguards. Also, he kept stables for horses, etc., etc. And he maintained a body of gentlemen troopers known as ahadis. Okay, basically, ahadis included those people of noble lineage who did not have, means of raising a contingent, or were people whom had impressed the emperor. So two kinds of people were included in the ahadis. One is those from noble lineage who cannot afford to maintain X number of horses, etc., etc. Second one, those people who have impressed the emperor based on their skills and army skills. Clear? And these ahadis were allowed to keep 8 to 10 horses and received a very high salary of rupees 800 per month. At that time, this is a very high salary, one of the highest in the world. Okay, so very handsome salaries were given to ahadis also. The thing is, these people were answerable only to the emperor and had a separate muster master, and these people were actually compared by the historians to that of knights in medieval Europe. You know about the knights now. You have seen in plenty of European history films regarding knights and all. So ahadis were actually equated with knights by the historians. So extremely loyal people, answerable to no one but the emperor, and also received very high salary, etc., etc., etc. Just like Babur, Akbar also maintained a very strong park of artillery. He even designed a detachable gun which can be carried on an elephant or a camel. Okay, he also invested into very huge siege guns. What are siege guns? Siege guns are those guns which are used to take down a fort. Okay, if you have seen old films and all, you might have seen how a fort is attacked. It is using siege guns. Okay, if you have seen Bahubali and all, you will have seen that catapult kind of thing. So siege gun is something like that only. Okay, except a much modern version. Okay, so these kinds of guns were also developed during the time of Akbar. I mean, Akbar heavily invested into developing such artillery capabilities as well. Clear? The thing is, we do not know if Akbar had any plans for navy. Okay, most of the battles fought by Akbar was on land. He had to deal with Deccan, he had to deal with west of India, east of India, northwestern border. Every single one of these battles were fought on land. So he invested into army. Air Force is nowhere, so forget about that. But Navy, he completely, I mean, we don't know if Akbar actually maintained a strong Navy. The only closest thing we hear about Navy during Akbar's time is that he attacked the eastern parts of India, certain campaigns in Orissa and all. He used a flotilla of boats. Okay, he used a flotilla of boats in one of his campaigns in the eastern region, Bengal, Orissa region. That is all that we know about Akbar's Navy. We do not see any instance where Akbar focuses too much into the navy. And this was one of his biggest drawbacks. Why? Because this led to Portuguese domination in Arabian Sea. If the mighty Mughal emperor had a very powerful navy, then a European power could not even imagine having such a command over Arabian Sea. Okay, so Akbar's neglect of navy, I mean, it is very common throughout the Mughal Empire. Okay, none of them had looked upon navy as a very important factor, and that is probably considered as a drawback of their military administration. Okay, so now we are going to see the next topic, organization of government. Any questions? Okay, nothing. So I'm moving on. This is a big chapter. Okay, this is a very big, probably the biggest chapter in your textbook. So plenty of slides are there. Let me just see the slide number. It's already 6:30. 1 second. Oh, we are only halfway. Okay, that is not good. So, guys, if you feel saturated, tell me. I will stop it here I will stop at any point for today and we will take whatever is remaining in the next class. Okay, if you feel saturated at any point, just put it in the chat. I will round up that topic and we will stop there. There are actually 40 slides, 42 slides. Now we are only at 20, so plenty more to go. Anyway, organization of government. So Akbar basically did not make too much changes in the organization of local self-government. I already told you that. He did not want to too much interfere in the local governments and all. The Paraganas and the Sarkars, etc. continued as before. The chief officers of a Sarkar were the Faujdar and the Amal Gusar. This Faujdar being the person who is in charge of law and order, and Amal Gusar is the person who is responsible for revenue collection. Okay, then territories of the empire were divided into Jagir, Khalisa, and Inam. You know this, so I am not going to put too much time into this. What is a Jagir, what is a Khalisa, what is an Inam? Everything we have covered under Delhi Sultanate. So, as far as Khalisa land is concerned, the income from this land directly goes to royal exchequer. Okay, Inam lands are given to religious men. Okay, basically a charity land, etc., etc. Then Jagirs were allotted to nobles and members of the royal family, etc., etc. So these are the three kinds of divisions: Khalisa, Jagir, and Inam. Okay, so his system of central government was based on the structure of government which evolved under Delhi Sultanate. But the functions of various departments were carefully reorganized. He did not change it too much. In a macro perspective, it is the same. But he made certain kinds of small changes within the administration. He shifted certain or shuffled certain positions, etc., etc. So we can see both Central Asian and Timurid traditions of having an all-powerful wazir under whom various heads of department functions. Okay, earlier in the Central Asian politics and even during the time of Sultanate and all, the position of wazir was very powerful. Okay, the chief minister. Wazir was the chief minister. So that position was extremely powerful. But later on, especially during the time of Mughals, this position began to become weaker and weaker. And, departments were handed over to different people. Rather than wazir having that all power under himself, basically a kind of portfolio was assigned and different departments were given to different ministers. Judiciary was separate always. So basically, in practice, the position of an all-powerful wazir was given up. Okay, wazir is not anymore an all-powerful person. He is just a minister, that's all. He was not more than that. In his capacity as a wakil, Bairam Khan had exercised the power of an all-powerful wazir. Okay, that is the only instance that we see during Akbar's reign where that position is very much powerful. Bairam Khan maintained that power all to himself. But afterwards, once Akbar came to power, the position gradually lost its prominence and it was considered as one among everyone else. Akbar reorganized the central machinery of administration on the basis of the division of power between various departments, checks and balances and all. And this position of a wazir or a wakil was not abolished, but it was stripped of most of its power. And this became largely a nominal position, a very much decorative position, but nothing more than that. Okay, so head of the revenue department was still the wazir. But under Akbar, generally, wazir did not hold the highest mansab. Wazir still was the head of revenue department, but wazir was not the person who received the highest mansab under Akbar. Okay, Akbar generally used the term diwan or diwan-e-ala rather than the term wazir. Okay, wazir basically is a chief minister. So you do not want to call him that anymore because he is basically the head of revenue department. That's it, nothing more than that. So rather than calling him the wazir, Akbar preferred the term or title diwan or diwan-e-ala. The head of military department was called as Mir Pakshi. And it was Mir Pakshi who is considered as the head of nobility. Very, very important. It is not the revenue department head, but it is actually the Mir Pakshi who is the head of nobility. And so, recommendations for appointment of mansabs, etc., etc., were actually done by or done through Mirpakshi. Based on Mirpakshi's recommendations, the emperor will take a decision, and once a person is appointed into that post, the file will be given to the Diwan. He then give the Jagir or assigns that Mansabdar, assigns the Jagir to that particular person. That's how it worked. Mirpakshi makes the recommendations, Akbar does the appointment, and the Diwan or Diwan-i-Ala just distributes the Jagir to that assigned person. So Mirpakshi was the first among nobles, head of nobility. Clear? He was also the head of intelligence department and information agencies of the empire. So very powerful as far as military is concerned. Intelligence officers known as Barits, similarly news reporters such as Vakya Navis were also posted all over the empire. These are all important positions in Akbar's time. There are even more than this that we will look into later, but as far as this textbook is concerned, these are the important positions. Okay, Diwan-i-Ala, Mirpakshi. Now we have come across a new term, Barit. Barit means intelligence officers, basically spies. Then news reporters or Vakya Navis. They are responsible for bringing various kinds of news from various parts of the country. Third most important position was that of Mir Saman. So who is Mir Saman? Mir Saman was the person who was in charge of the household, the royal household, the palace, also the harem. Harem is the place where women folk of the palace lives. So Mir Saman is the person who is in charge of the palace, the harem, and he is also the person who looks after the etiquettes in the court, seating arrangements in the court, etc. etc. So basically, since he had such very important mission, very important tasks, he is the person who is in charge of the harem where the royal women live. So only those people who were extremely trustworthy and loyal to the emperor were given this position. Mir Saman, very important position. Okay, and he was also in charge of various articles, costly royal articles which were supposed to be made, and all these were made in royal workshops known as karkhanas. The next important position is that of the Chief Qazi. Who is the Chief Qazi? Obviously, it's like the Supreme Court Chief Justice, highest law officer of the land. I mean, obviously, Akbar is even higher than him, but anyway, Chief Qazi is basically one of the highest powers as far as judiciary is concerned. Sometimes this post was also mixed up with Chief Sadar, who is responsible for charitable and religious endowments. So usually this Chief Qazi and Chief Sadar used to be a mixed combined position. Okay, so this actually was split during the time of a very infamous person known as Abdul Nabi. Again, think about the Jodha Akbar film. In that, you can see that certain religious people, they called as the ulama in Akbar's court, often creates headache for him. Okay, and the leader of that ulama shown in that film is Abdul Nabi. And Abdul Nabi was an extremely corrupt person. And during his time, Akbar actually lost his favor or lost his trust on the position of Chief Qazi. Okay, Akbar made it a deliberate part of his policy to grant Inam lands to all persons irrespective of religion, faith, etc. If you remember, Inam land means what? Land given for religious purposes, charity purposes, etc. etc. right? And Akbar gave this to literally every person who should be given it, okay, irrespective of religion. He did not just give that to Muslims, he gave that to Hindus and other religious people as well. Okay. Also, he made a condition. Out of the given Inam land, half of this land will be cultivable wasteland. Okay, it is the Inam land, yes, but half of that land should be cultivable wasteland, which means it is a land where cultivation can happen, but it is not yet cultivated. So what is the idea here? Expansion of agriculture. So once this Inam is granted, since 50% of the land is there where you can expand agriculture. So more and more Inam is given, more and more area of the country will come under agriculture. Again, brilliancy by Akbar. Okay, this was one of his policies in granting Inams. 50% of the land should be cultivable wastelands. Now, in order to make himself available for everyone, Akbar very carefully planned his day. I mean, he is an emperor. He has to do a lot of things. Okay, he has to take care of his people. He has to take care of this department, that department. He has to make time for his personal affairs. Okay, so he carefully planned the whole day. So in the morning, the first thing he did in the official agenda is something known as Jarokha Darshan. So what is Jarokha Darshan? Jarokha Darshan is the time when emperor comes in the Jarokha window, so that the people can see him. And this is considered as a very auspicious activity and all. Something considered as very, very much awed by the people, etc., etc. And during the time of Jarokha Darshan, sometimes he accepted certain petitions from the people, or etc. Okay, people can give him their grievances and all. Then once this has been received, these grievances were immediately attended. Okay, immediately it should be resolved. So either in the Jarokha Darshan itself Akbar resolves it, or this is taken into an open darbar known as Diwan-i-Aam. And this continued till midday. Just like our parliament. I mean, parliament or assembly or whatever. Okay, discussions and debates, etc. happens on till afternoon, and then they go for lunch and come back again, and so and so. Okay, so Akbar's Diwan-i-Aam continued up till midday, where he found solutions for various problems presented to him by the people. So this is an open darbar. Okay, everyone hears everything that is going on here. So he also wanted another separate hall or separate darbar for taking care of confidential matters regarding security, etc., etc. This was actually done in a separate chamber near Akbar's bathing apartment, that is Khushal Khana. Okay, a separate chamber was given for that purpose. Anyway, finally in 1580, as administration continued, in 1580, Akbar divided the entire empire into 12 Shubhas. You do not have to study the name of each of the Shubha. I mean, Punjab is one Shubha, Lahore is another one, etc., etc. Deccan is another one. And no need. Just understand that the empire was divided into 12 different Shubhas in 1580. And a governor known as a Subedar, a Diwan, okay, a person of who is in charge of land revenue, a Bakshi in charge of law and order, a Sadar, the religious head, a Qazi who is in charge of judiciary, and a Vakya Navis who is in charge of reporting everything that is happening in there. A set of these people were assigned into each of these Shubhas. Okay, understood? So again, brilliancy by Akbar, very beautiful divisions of administration. Okay, so this concludes the central administration of Akbar. Organization of army, organization of the entire Mansabdari system, then central administration, local self-administration, etc., etc. Now we are going to see what was Akbar's relationship with Rajputs. Let me see if there are any questions. Akbar never used sea route for trade, and that means he was focused only to northwest for trade. No. I did not say that Akbar never used sea route for trade. I said that he never focused on army. Okay, trades still happened over the sea through India, etc., etc. Obviously, more trade would have been through the northwestern frontier, but sea trade still continued. But he never maintained a strong navy. That's the difference. Navy, and I mean, even now we have that. Now we have a strong Indian navy, and we have merchant navy. Merchant navy takes care of all the other things, trade and all. Navy takes care of the military power. So we do not have any evidence of we are not sure about it. Okay, we do not come across any solid evidence that Akbar took a lot of interest in navy as he did in army. That's all. When we declare a ruler as real consolidator of an empire, is it focused only in the land expansion under the empire, or it has more features? We look at such political, social, religious, and economic. We look at everything. Okay, the term itself is consolidation. Okay, consolidator means what? You have to acquire that land. You have to bring peace to that land and stability to that land. Okay, without that, you can't say he's a consolidator. Until then, he is just an expansionist. In the previous classes also, we have heard of plenty of rulers who acquired plenty of areas but lost that areas before they can, expand it or establish it. We saw about Humayun. In Humayun's case, he conquered Malwa, he conquered certain parts of Rajasthan, etc., etc. But the moment he left, rebellions happened and this place was gone. So you can't say that he consolidated medieval India, Central India, Deccan region. If you are consolidating it, you have to bring stability. You have to have that clear domination in that region. And you have to maintain that as well. And Akbar did that. Once Akbar captured a region, he maintained that region and he implemented his administrative structure and measures and orders, everything in that region. That is why Akbar is called as consolidator. Otherwise, we can use that term for Humayun, Babur, etc., right? They all did capture certain regions and all. But they lost it immediately after they gained it. That's the issue. And as far as Akbar is concerned, he is very important in our history because of two reasons. One is he is the consolidator of the Mughal Empire in India. Number two, he is the person who sets up the northwestern defense of India. Northwestern frontier of India has been consolidated by Mughal Emperor Akbar, the Kabul, Kandahar, Ghazni line. Okay, that is actually the extent up to which Mughal Empire goes into northwest. We will see that Shah Jahan tries to go beyond that, but he fails. We are going to study that in the upcoming slides, upcoming chapters. So we will take it up at that time. Anyway, I'm moving on to relations with Rajputs. Okay, so the wider background of Mughal policy towards powerful Rajas and Zamindars of the country were more or less the same. Okay, they were broadly tolerant towards most of them. Certain exemptions are there, but wider policy remained the same throughout the Mughal Empire. Humayun actually, after coming back to power, he deliberately tried to bring a policy to win over all these different elements, Zamindars, Rajas, etc., etc. He wanted more allies now. He can't afford to continue with war. He can't afford to create more and more enemies. He actively tried to bring more and more friends. Akbar followed the same policy. Okay, he tried to expand his empire through wars. Yes, war was one method to expand his empire. Other method, and there were plenty of peaceful methods also. Some of them, submitted voluntarily. Matrimonial alliance can be another method to expand kingdom, expand allies and friendship. You know that we have seen this earlier also. Okay, for example, here Paramal, the ruler of Amber, cemented the alliance by marrying his younger daughter Harka Bhai to Akbar. So through this matrimonial alliance, Akbar basically gained goodwill with the Rajputs of Amber. Okay, so this is a slight deviation from the Jodha Akbar film. In Jodha Akbar film, Baramal's daughter is Jodha Bhai, but here it is Harka Bhai. Jodha Bhai, here according to this textbook, Jodha Bhai is actually the princess who gets married to Salim, Akbar's son, that is Jahangir. Okay, it's not, so that there we have some issues and all. So that's also the reason why there were plenty of commotion that happened during the release of Jodha film. Okay, that part of history is not exactly well clear. But anyway, marriages between Muslims and Muslim rulers and Hindu potentates were not exactly unusual. Okay, such instances had happened plenty of times in the past as well. The thing is, marriages never actually went ahead to establish a very powerful alliance between these two countries. Okay, marriages happened, yes, but it did not, give any kind of stability, or it did not give any kind of assurance that they are allies forever. There were plenty of instances that once the marriage is done, the daughter will go into the other family forever and she will not return ever. And these two kingdoms will go to war and, one will beat the other. All these things will happen. So matrimonial alliances were not exactly a very stable method to establish expansionist policy. Usually the girls were lost to the families and never came back after marriage in medieval Indian times. But Akbar followed a different policy. Okay, in the matrimonial alliance itself, Akbar followed a different policy. He gave complete religious freedom to Hindu wives. That part is shown in the Jodha Akbar film correctly. Okay, in that you can see Jodha Bhai was allowed to build a small mandir inside the palace and all. So religious freedom was basically given to his Hindu wives. He did not force them to convert into Islam or anything. Similarly, he treated their family very respectfully and were given very high posts in the nobility, etc. etc. For example, Paramal, who married his daughter to Akbar, Bharamal was made a high grandee in the Mughal politics. Similarly, his son Bhagwan Das rose into a rank of 5,000 Mansabdar. Similarly, his grandson Mansingh was given the rank of 7,000 Mansab. So earlier itself we saw Mansab of 7,000 was given only to two people during Akbar's time. One is Raja Mansingh and other is Aziz Khan Koka. So these people were given highest rank. So these are Hindus. Okay, and I mean not Aziz Khan Koka, but my Raja Mansingh is a Hindu and he was given one of the highest Mansabs in Akbar's times. So Akbar's policy was very much liberal, very much unorthodox, and very much building a character on his own. Anyway, in 1572, when Akbar dashed to Gujarat, Bharamal was placed in the charge of Agra. Again, you can see how much Akbar laid his trust on these kings and what's the kind of relationship between Akbar and Bharamal. Bharamal was given the charge of Agra when Akbar had to go to Gujarat. And in Agra, all the royal women are staying in Agra. So if you are entrusting the royal women with a person, a king, then obviously you should have that kind of trust on that person. So that was the kind of relationship, or that was the kind of trust that Akbar built with Rajput kings. Okay, and this was Akbar's one of the master strokes of Akbar's policy, gaining the Rajputs in his side. Eventually destroyed by Aurangzeb, but this policy was continued by other Mughals like Shah Jahan and Jahangir, etc. Okay, Akbar's Rajput policy was combined with a policy of broad religious toleration. In earlier itself, he had abolished Jizya. Okay, in 1564, Akbar abolished Jizya. I think you all know that. Earlier itself, he had abolished pilgrim tax, practice of forcible conversion of prisoners of war. All these orthodox practices were actually abolished by Akbar, and this earned him a lot of favor among other religions. Okay, so that Rajputs also had a very good relationship with Akbar now. Some of them were forcibly beaten, but they were treated very well after their defeat. So they were having a very good relationship with Akbar. Some of them submitted to Akbar on their own voluntarily. And then there was this one state, I told you earlier also, this one state, Mewar, was steadfast in not accepting Mughal suzerainty. Okay, so in 1572, Rana Pratap succeeded Rana Uday Singh to the Gadi. Okay, Rana Pratap becomes the ruler of Mewar in 1572. So Akbar thought that, okay, now there is a new ruler in the throne. So I will try to bring some friendship with this ruler, this new ruler. So Akbar immediately sent embassies under various rulers, various nobles, including Mansingh, to Rana Pratap's court. And Rana was a very great personality. Okay, I mean, he was very much chivalrous personality. He graciously accepted this embassy. Only problem was he was not ready to accept Mughal suzerainty. Okay, after Mansingh mission, Akbar sent his Rana Pratap actually put the imperial robe that was sent by Akbar and sent his son Amar Singh to the court of Bhagwan Das to pay homage to Akbar, etc., etc. So very cordial relation happened. Only thing is Rana Pratap was not ready to accept Mughal suzerainty. Okay, he wanted to have that friendship, but I mean, he did not want to make an enemy of Akbar, but he will not accept Mughal suzerainty. So no final agreement could be made. And Akbar wanted to, annex this region. He cannot leave one powerful empire independent as a part of his bigger empire. So obviously, you have to have a war. A war between Rana Pratap and Akbar was inevitable. So in 1576, Akbar moved into Ajmer and deputed Raja Mansingh with a force of 5,000 to lead a campaign against Rana Pratap. So Rana Pratap knew that this is going to happen. So he actually did something. Okay, this policy, in the modern day, this policy is known as the scorched earth policy, which was followed by Mao Zedong in China. Okay, scorched earth policy followed by Mao Zedong in China. So something similar was done by Rana Pratap also. He basically devastated the entire territory of Chittor. so that when Mughal armies reaches there, they will not have any resources. Okay, Rana Pratap destroyed the entire place. So there are no agricultural fields, there are no fruit-bearing trees, nothing. So the Mughals cannot get their hands on food or any other basic supplies. Okay, so this policy was followed by Rana Pratap, and he himself took refuge in the fortified areas of hills and all. But anyway, finally, in the battleground of Haldi Khatti, a very furious battle was fought, and Rana was actually supported by some of the Afghans also. Afghan contingent under Hakim Khan Sur supported Rana Pratap in this battle. Same goes for the tribal people known as Peels. Okay, so Afghans, Peels, etc. supported Rana Pratap against Akbar, but still he was no match. I mean, Akbar is the emperor of India now. Most of the Rajputs are with Akbar, so a mighty army is under him, and he came to defeat Rana Pratap. So the very furious battle happened in Haldi Khatti. Rana Pratap lost. Okay, but thing is, you have to remember, Battle of Haldi Khatti was not a struggle between Hindus and Muslims. Don't think like that. Because even in the side of Rana Pratap, there were Muslims. Afghans are Muslims. They fought in the side of Rana Pratap. Other Rajputs were in the side of Akbar. So both armies were, very well mixed. So this is not a battle between Hindus and Muslims. This is not a battle between Indians and foreigners. That is also, you have to be very careful. Don't think that one side is an Indian side and the other side is a foreigner side. No, Akbar is as much Indian as anyone can be. Just because Akbar's grandfather Babur was from outside India doesn't mean that Akbar is an alien now. Akbar was born and brought up in India only. So he is as much Indian as it can get. So this is not a battle between Indians and foreigners. This is a battle between two kings who are trying to extend their political power. That's it. Okay. So finally, I mean, Rana Pratap could not win a full-fledged battle. So eventually he resorted to guerrilla kind of warfare. Okay. But the thing is, again, Rana Pratap was thoroughly defeated in the Battle of Haldi Khatti. He did not give up that easily. He, continued certain kinds of skirmishes, etc., with the help of Peels, and for a very long time. Okay. So anyway, this policy, by his policy of inducting the Rajput Rajas into Mughal service and treating them at par with the Mughal grandees, and according, broad religious toleration to his subjects and his courteous behavior to his former opponents, Akbar succeeded in cementing his alliance with the Rajput rulers. That is what we are trying to establish here. This is how Akbar does it, not through, a strong arm. He builds this up through his diplomatic skills, through making alliances, through his behavior, through his character. That was the ruler Akbar was. Okay, so Akbar gradually manages to bring the Rajputs into his own side. Anyway, Rana Pratap's method of sporadic warfare was later elaborated further by Malik Ambar and the Deccani general, and later by Shivaji and all. When we study all these people, you will understand. Okay, Malik Ambar, Shivaji, all resorts to guerrilla warfare. Okay, and this was actually done earlier by Rana Pratap also. So Rana was hunted. Okay, Rana was hunted from valley to valley, from forest to forest, and he had to go through lots of hardships. Although the Peel chiefs assisted him a lot, still nothing could be done. And finally, in 1579, the Mughal pressure started to relax on Rana. Okay, Akbar had to deal with something else in the eastern side of India. So Mughals never, did not pursue the Rana policy anymore. Okay, they began to become a bit relaxed. Akbar's half-brother, Mirza Hakim, he was a constant troublemaker. Okay, Mirza Hakim. So he made certain incursions into Punjab region in order to fish in this troubled waters. Okay, he had to deal with Rana Pratap. Akbar just finished with Rana Pratap, and he is now dealing with Bengal and some eastern issues. So now Mirza Hakim is attacking through the northwestern border in the region of Punjab, fishing in the troubled waters. And this rebellion by Mirza Hakim is considered as one of the most serious internal crises that Akbar ever had to face. You have seen that movie Jodha Akbar again. In that you see the final battle is between Akbar and Mirza Hakim. Rajputs are all with Akbar, and it is pictured as a one-on-one battle, and Mirza Hakim eventually loses, and Hrithik Roshan playing Akbar wins the sword fight. That is how it ends. But anyway, here a full-fledged battle happens. Mirza Hakim is scouted down through sheer power. Okay, but no Mughal expedition was sent against Rana Pratap after 1585. Okay, finally, completely the Mughals abandoned this pursuing Rana Pratap policy. Rana Pratap couldn't do anything anymore, so he was left alone. Here, Akbar had more important things to take care of. Okay, but when Rana Pratap understood that no Mughal contingents are going to come, or Mughals have completely left the area, Rana Pratap recovered many of his territories. Okay, he recovered plenty of his lost territories and built a new capital known as Chavand near the modern day Durgapur region. Rana Pratap built a new capital named as Chavand. But in the year 1597, while he was actually straightening a bow, due to certain accidents, he died. Rana Pratap died at the age of 51. He sustained an injury incurred while trying to draw a stiff bow. Okay, and Rana Pratap died. He did not die in the battlefield. He died because of this accident. Clear? Akbar conferred Jodhpur upon Uday Singh. So still plenty of issues are happening in different parts of the empire. And the Jodhpur region, which Akbar recently conquered, was given to Uday Singh. And to strengthen his position, Uday Singh married his daughter Jagan Gosain or Jodha Bai to Akbar's eldest son Salim. This is why I told you in this, in the NCERT books and all, Jodha Bai is considered as this wife of Prince Salim. Okay, not Akbar. In the Jodha Akbar film, it is different, but this is also different. Okay, go by this one. This is the NCERT. So go by whatever is written in this textbook. Anyway, another incident is in 1593 when the son-in-law of Rising of Bikaner died due to the fall from a palki. Akbar went personally to the Raja's house to console him and dissuaded his daughter from performing sati as her children were young. So now you can see how much Akbar is taking an effort to build his relation. The mighty Mughal emperor went all the way to Bikaner to console the Raja and persuade his son's wife not to commit sati. Okay, now you can see how much the Rajputs respect him and how much Akbar respects or cares about the Rajputs. So this was the kind of personality Akbar was. So the Rajput policy of Akbar proved extremely beneficial to the Mughal state as well as to the Rajputs. This alliance secured to the Mughals, the Mughal Empire, the services of the bravest warriors of India. Rajputs were easily the bravest and the most chivalrous warriors of India at that time, and Mughal Empire got the full backing of Rajputs because of Akbar's Rajput policy, which he built based on his character, his attitude, etc., rather than strong arms. Okay, I will just look into the chat. One second, let me finish this slide also. Anyway, Akbar's Rajput policy was continued by his successors also, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, etc. For example, Jahangir actually, his mother himself was a Rajput princess, and Jahangir was himself married to a Kachawaha princess as well as the Jodhpur princesses. Similarly, princesses of the Jaisalmer and Bikaner were also married to him. Okay, and Jahangir also gave very honorable positions to all their family houses and all. The main achievement of Jahangir is that was actually the settlement of the outstanding dispute with Mewar. Already I told you, Rana Pratap was one person who never submitted to Akbar. So Mewar is that one territory which remained hostile. It is actually to the credit of Jahangir that Mewar was finally subjected to the Mughal rule. Okay, so what happened is Rana Pratap's son, Amar Singh, succeeded to the throne. After Rana Pratap's death, Amar Singh came to the throne. In 1613, Jahangir himself reached Ajmer to conduct a direct campaign against Mewar. Okay, one ultimate showdown against Mewar. Prince Khurram, that is Shah Jahan. Shah Jahan was actually deputed with a very large army to defeat Mewar. The emperor will stay at Ajmer. Now his son, Shah Jahan, is supposed to go and, with a huge army and defeat Mewar. And Shah Jahan succeeded. Okay, and Rana's son, Karan Singh, who was deputed to proceed to Jahangir's court, was actually graciously received. Okay, Amar Singh's son was actually deputed and he was taken into the Mughal court. And Jahangir received him with very graciously. He actually stood up from his throne. He came down and he gave him a very royal robe and all, and very warmly he welcomed the Rana. And also, in order to avoid humiliation to the Rana, Jahangir did not insist upon paying, the Rana paying personal homage or anything, or entering the royal service or whatever. So by doing so, by treating the loser in a very honorable manner with proper respect, Jahangir completed what Akbar has begun. Akbar's Rajput policy was finally culminated or completed by his son Jahangir, and which brought the Mughal Rajput alliance to its highest. Okay, now we are going to see rebellions and the further expansion of Mughal Empire. So shall we stop or shall we move on? It's up to you. There are some more slides remaining. Either I will take it in the next class or we shall finish this. Up to you. This can be should or be compared. Both are different. Okay, entirely different times. In ancient India, it's there is no. I mean, we do not come across Hindus. Muslims are completely absent at that time. So that religion is out of picture. At that time, it is Buddhists, Jainists, and Hindus. All of them were treated well by Ashoka. So that's entirely different. And comparison is very different. Okay, you can't compare and Ashoka lived in very ancient times. Akbar comes at least around 1,600 years later. Okay, minimum, somewhere around that. So it's not easy to compare these two kings, but we can definitely say that if Ashoka is the greatest king of ancient India, Akbar is definitely the greatest emperor of medieval India. Okay, I mean their policies and all are entirely different. Their approach is different. Ashoka, after his Kalinga war, completely neglected his army. Okay, and it was one of the reasons why the Mauryans collapsed. We will study that in ancient India in the upcoming chapters. But Akbar, on the other hand, he never neglected the army. He neglected navy, but not the army. He kept a very strong army, took care of all these things, etc., etc. Okay, so it's hard to compare like that. Did he ban sati? Okay, he did not ban sati. Akbar made sure that sati is not conducted against the girl's will. That also is in one of the upcoming slides. Akbar made sure that, if a girl wants to do sati on her own, she can do that. The emperor will not interfere. It's up to her, entirely up to her. But he made sure that no one else coerces her or forces her to do that against her will. Okay. Also, if the girl is very young and she has not yet been with her husband, she has not consummated the marriage, then she is strictly prevented from doing sati. Okay, if she had not been with her husband or consummated the marriage, then the girl is strictly prevented from doing sati. Okay, there is no reason why she should conduct sati because she has not been with her husband. Immediately after the marriage itself, the husband dies of certain reasons, then the girl is forcibly prevented from doing sati. So we can say that Akbar prevented sati but not banned it in the complete sense. Akbar made sati the voluntary decision of that person. Okay, a complete ban on sati comes only in the modern Indian times, thanks to Raja Ram Mohan Roy and all. So I think I will stop here. It is already 7 p.m. and I think how many slides are more today? Actually, there are about 10 more slides. So a lot to go. I think all of you are very much saturated now itself. So we will leave it here today and take up this remaining portion and the Deccan policy of Mughals. That is Jahangir, Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb. Everything in the next class. Okay. So, sir, will you start economics? Okay. Got it. Do it ASAP. We couldn't find any better explanation as like you are teaching history. Okay. Thank you, Nirmala Kappa. Thank you for your encouragements. It all helps me to do all this more and more. So yeah, I take classes on the alternate days. Okay, that's what I can do now based on my time situations and all. And I will take up more in a bit more with a higher pace. This medieval India is almost completed. Okay, I mean we have in the next class Mughals is done. Then some more chapters are there, and very soon we will complete the medieval India. We have almost reached about 70% of medieval India. Then we will go to ancient India. It is comparatively smaller to the medieval India. Then we have to take art and culture, and the entire history portion is done. I'm not taking world history now. World history is not there for prelims, it is only there for mains. So we will look at that later. So once I am done with history, I will take up everything else. Whatever you want based on demand. In the Telegram group that I have, I will put all the your certain questions for your suggestions. You can vote there, and based on demand, I will take. This is my Telegram channel. I will be uploading the PDF of today's class here. Please follow this channel to get more from my side. Okay, you can also my contacts, personal contacts are all given in this Telegram channel. You can use that to personally contact me and make requests or suggestions on how to improve classes and all. Please like this video. Okay, please like the video, share with your friends, and also make comments in the public comment section, not in the live chat, but in the comment section under the YouTube video, so that more and more people will start to engage with all these videos. Okay, so thank you to all of you. We will meet again in the next class. So until then, bye bye.